Okay guys, good evening. So I've been kind of sitting on this video for like 4 months, waiting on my visa extensions to go through and get my passport back so that I would have, photos of the documents to show and not just talking. But I'm going to go ahead and list some other things that I feel like other YouTubers maybe haven't covered about the Philippines, or at least not a lot. So, I don't know if you can tell, but the first on the list is being sick. So, I'm sick right now, and just for a little bit of backstory, I was the kind of person in America where I never got sick. Hardly. Maybe I would get a cold once a year or something like that, but I mean, as far as, like maybe vomiting or something like that, I mean, I haven't done that in, I don't know, 15 years or something. So I came on vacation last June and spent the month of June in the Philippines to make sure that I liked it, and I didn't get sick then. I was felt completely fine. Since I have moved here, I got here in November of last year, and I was okay for the first 2 or 3 months, but for the last like 4 months, I get sick with a sore throat and a cough like every 4 to 6 weeks or something like that. And the last time, before this time, it lasted like a month. So I don't know about this time, but that's something to keep in mind if you're coming here. I mean, even if you're the type of person that doesn't get sick a lot at home, and it doesn't affect everyone this way, but we're not used to the germs and bacteria here, so I mean, it's been a little bit rough for sure. I actually even went to the doctor the last time I got sick like this, but they gave me antibiotics and a couple other, like, I don't know, potassium pills and vitamins or whatever. It didn't really do anything. So the next item on the list, no one really wants to talk about this, but if your Filipina has children and your Filipina is from a province, especially if her family is kind of poor, which most of them are, chances are her children are going to act somewhat wild. And I don't mean they're going to throw fits and not listen and be terrible. I don't mean that. They're pretty well behaved and respectful and, helpful and everything. The problem is their standard of living, or the way that they live, is somewhat different from what we're taught, as far as maybe manners. For example, Alona's son is 12 years old, and we took him to a hotel in Sindongan once, and he, without even thinking about it, right in the parking lot, just started peeing out in the open in the parking lot. Anyone could see. He didn't care. And I kind of was shocked and threw a fit about it, and he didn't understand why I was upset or whatever. So and you'll see that all throughout the Philippines. Guys will just be standing alongside the road where everybody can see and just peeing. They just don't care. And it's not like in America. I mean, I've done my fair share of pull the car over and walk across the ditch into a tree row and pee. But, you're hidden in a tree row or in between the car door and the car or something. No, not here. They just out in the open, even sometimes facing the road. And they don't care. So it's a different standard. And I'll give another example. One time Alona's son was staying with us at our apartment in Dipolog, and it was a meal time. I don't remember if it was lunch or dinner, but it doesn't really matter. I look over, and he's sitting on top of the tabletop. with his feet on the top of the table and squatting, like how Filipinos, they'll just be standing somewhere and squat down and kind of sitting on their ankles or whatever. And he was doing that on top of the table. There were plenty of chairs available, but he was on top of the table. And I'm like, what are you doing? And it's like, and now that we've come here to where they were raised, basically, now I understand. They kind of run around here like wild. I mean, I guess they have better things to worry about than table manners. But I mean, that's something to keep in mind to a foreigner. I mean, that's going to be frustrating if you have nice furniture and they're jumping around on it and acting crazy. I mean, something to consider anyway. So, another thing is standards of living. When I first came here, I thought for sure, like, oh man, one of these, poverty stricken poor Filipinos would feel so privileged and so lucky to have modern amenities such as air conditioning and, so forth, washing machines so they don't have to scrub clothes by hand. At least in my experience with the province girl, that's not the case. Um, she honestly pretty much hates air conditioning. Uh, she would much rather stay out there in the main part of the house with it being hot like that rather than come in here where it's air conditioned. And she freezes at night, and I've got the aircon set to 20 Celsius. That's like 68 or 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, the washing machine. She sometimes, still to this day, will just choose to wash clothes by hand. She really. Guys, it's not like you're rescuing them. They really don't care that much about modern amenities or Western things. And if you find one that does, maybe that speaks to her character. One thing that I've noticed, especially since we've came here up into the mountain, and I've never heard anyone talk about this either, is prepare to feel ants on you a lot. The number of times that I'll feel an ant crawling on my arm and have to, like, kill it and flick it off or whatever, probably 50 a day. I mean, it's constant. No matter where you go, you can stay on the concrete road. No matter where you go here, you're going to have ants and bugs and all kinds of stuff just crawling on you. You just are. Now, I can't speak to the ants and bugs getting into the house because they get into this house always. Always. But there's no, like, actual windows in the rest of the part of the house. Like, everything's just open air, so stuff can just come in and chickens run through and stuff like that. But I don't know anyone up here who has an actual, like, concrete, totally finished, sealed up, air conditioned house up here. I don't know of a single one, so I can't speak to whether they're able to get in those houses or not. But definitely, just if you take a lawn chair and just sit outside, 5 minutes is all it takes, and you're going to have ants on you. If you put a piece of string between any two trees, just walk around anywhere and find two trees, put a string across it, within 15 minutes, the whole string will have a line of ants going across it. It's crazy. This next one people have talked about, but it's a big one. No matter how educated and how well your Filipina speaks English, there are some things that she'll never understand. You will never be able to connect on a super deep intellectual level it's not going to happen. You know, like jokes and things like that. Some of them they understand, some of them they don't. But especially like things that you have to think about just a little bit that have like a subtle meaning. Absolutely don't understand. Like, I don't know. You know, silly sayings like two birds, one stone. They have no idea what that means. Um, or like, you know, once bitten, twice shy. I asked that one earlier today. Nope, no idea. Um, it's one of those things where you'll start to kind of lose some of your mental faculty if you don't keep connections in America to talk to. I find myself all the time dumbing down my own language to speak like they speak instead of keeping my standard, you know, like I would in America. Just simple things like instead of saying, "Are you hungry?" You know, I'll say like them, "You're hungry? You're mad? You're tired?" Or, you know, I can't think of all the examples right off the top of my head, but there's several where they don't exactly say the correct thing or the correct phrasing in English, but I find myself matching them. Instead of correcting them and making them feel self conscious, I just bring myself down to match them. Along those same lines, I feel like I'm pretty fortunate with the Filipina that I chose and her family. I'm well accepted here. They invite me to things without asking me to pay. You know, I really truly am part of the gang. But no matter what, unless the Filipina's whole family is very well educated and sort of wealthy and can speak very good English, you'll always feel left out. You'll be sitting in a room with 10 or 12 Filipinos, and someone will say something that sounds like Walla Walla Bing Bang, and then the whole room erupts into laughter, and you just sit there because you have no idea what they just said. You have no idea why anyone's laughing. And if you ask, it kind of annoys them. Like I can tell that when I ask like what's going on, what's being said, too many times, Alona will start her. You know, I can tell by the look on her face that she gets a bit annoyed to have to explain everything always. But at the same time, I feel like the odd man out because I don't know anything about what's going on. And I'm sorry, but I'm just not going to be able to learn an off the wall language like Bisaya. Like, there's not even. Translators don't even have that language as an option. That it's not. What is it, spoken by 0.23% of the world's population or something? I mean, it's not. It's not something I want to devote 10 years to learning because, my God. I mean, an Asian language, that's tough. Even Tagalog would be bad enough, but some of them down here don't even speak Tagalog. I mean, that's how, you know, far out here I am. And a lot of these, you know, things are going to be specific to my situation because I am so far out into the province. I mean, it's way removed from anything, you know, super Western. Another thing that kind of surprised me was, you know, you would think in a country where everyone's kind of poor, um, and everyone's looking for, you know, food money and all this kind of stuff, that they would be more than willing to, you know, accept work for pay. You know, I figured that I would come here and they would be so eager to just work. Um, That's not the case. Some of them could give a rat's behind whether they work a day in their life or not. They're just fine laying around, getting by however the heck they can. I really don't understand how they can get by other than just mooching off of other family members some rice and stuff like that. But they seem to never need a job. They, even though they have nothing, they live with somebody else in some shack. They don't have a motorbike. They barely have any clothes. They don't have enough to eat. But they would just rather lay around and play on their phones all day. So a lot of them anyway. Some of them want to work, but a lot of them are very well happy to just, no, I don't need to work, thank you. Okay, this is a big one. Beggars. So if you guys don't know, both ways, asking for money as a handout in the Philippines is against the law. It's illegal nationwide. Also, giving someone like a beggar the money after they've asked for it is also illegal nationwide. So technically, if you give beggars money, you are breaking the law. That does not, however, stop them from asking all day, every store you stop at. The amount of insane sights that I've seen. A guy with a little boy, maybe 7 years old. The little boy had crippled legs, couldn't walk. The dad set him at the entrance of the mall and then left and went across the street. And that boy laid there and he fell forward with his head on the concrete and he was just crying with his forehead touching the concrete with his legs out in front of him folded over, just screaming and crying with a little cup beside him to get coins. I mean, I almost lost it. I went across the street to where that dad was, and I told Lona to tell him if he doesn't go over there and pick his son up and take care of him properly, if I ever see that happen again, I'm going to the police. Because believe it or not, even in the Philippines, there are child neglect and child endangerment laws. So it's not as backward as people kind of think as a third world country. I mean, there are, civil protection laws for sure. Speaking of laws, I had a run-in with the police recently. So everywhere I've been in the Philippines, I've been to Manila, Cebu, Bohol, I've been to Boracay, Mindanao, Dipolo, I've been to quite a few places in the Philippines, and never, ever have I ever been asked by a police officer to provide personal information of mine to them so that they may check on me and my well-being. In fact, the apartment that we rented in Dipolog for 6 months, our landlord was a police officer. She never asked me for information, and I rented a house from her. Now, we moved up here into the mountain, and all of a sudden the police came to where I was building the house and said, hey, we need to take a picture of you, and we're going to be visiting you every month to make sure your well-being is, still going, make sure you're still healthy and alive, basically. And I agreed to that. I let them take my picture, and I said, yeah, come on back once a month. Well, I'll make us some coffee, and we'll sit around and play a card game or something if you want to. I got no problem with that. So then we get contacted to come to the police station. So we go down there, and they have this long form for me to fill out. And it's an official letterhead, PNP, form. But it has all kinds of information on there. All kinds of, like my passport number, what my occupation is or was. Like all of this random, my address in America and all kinds of stuff. They wanted to take all kinds of pictures of me again. I looked at the police officer and I said, I'm not willing to give you my personal information. As far as I understand, there's no law in the Philippines that says I have to give you that information unless I'm being investigated for a crime. I asked him, I said, sir, if I absolutely refuse to give you any of this information, will you put me in handcuffs? And he said no. I said, okay, thank you. Done. Whether that was smart or not, I don't know. I don't think that this local, P&P department is like a super corrupt one or whatever. I guess we'll find out. I don't know. But, yeah, I told them I'm not providing my personal information. I told them, take all the pictures you want. In fact, when they went to take my picture at the police station, I agreed to that. I found a female officer, and I got right up next to her and did it like a silly pose and made him take my picture like that. And one of the officers, I think, got pretty mad. But, in this situation, the law's on my side. I don't have to give them any information. But I told them, you're more than welcome to come to my home once a month if you want to check and make sure I'm not killed by Abu Sayyaf or whatever. I even told them maybe the better idea would be to go up into the mountain where Abu Sayyaf or the NPA hide out, and maybe go, do your jobs and kill them. Then I won't have to worry about my safety or whatever. But yeah, that didn't go over well either. So now, the big visa situation. I've waited long enough. Let's just go ahead and go through it really quick. My throat is starting to hurt, so I'm trying to get through it. So, my main point in this is that most everyone says you can do 2-month visa extensions only at a time. 2 months. Because everyone was so mad that they went from 6 months to 2 months. Technically, yes, you can only extend your visa 2 months at a time. But what they don't tell you is you can pay for 4 extensions at the same time and get 8 months in the same visit. You can get longer than that. Your initial stay can be extended to a maximum of 16 months. Just from one visit to immigration, you can extend a maximum of 16 months. Now, you'll pay for 2-month extensions 8 times. So, if we look at my documentation, I went in in January and extended to March. When I went to pick up my visa information in March is when I got my ACR card. You can get an ACR card after being in country 60 days or longer. And you need an ACR card or you can't get GCash. So then I have my visas that say I'm good all the way through to November of 2025. There's the proof right there. I paid for 4 visa extensions 2 months at a time. So I paid for 8 months. 1 visit, and it took them about 3.5 months to process the paperwork and get me my passport back. So, I arrived in the Philippines the 3rd of November, 24. And there's all my documentation. So, I'm good until November 1st. I mean, that's more than 2 months from now anyway. So that disproves the only 2 months at a time lie right there. And in fact, you can do 16 months. You're given 30 days upon arrival. You can extend 30 days. Then the initial stay can be extended to a maximum of 16 months. I've heard some foreigners say that the immigration officer in their area did not allow more than 2-month extensions at a time. I don't understand that, but all I can vouch for is the one in Dipolog, because that's the one that I go to. And he asked me, how long would you like to extend? And I said, well, how long can I extend? He said, as long as you want. And I said, well, let's start with 8 months. And he said, okay. Here's the cost times 4. 2-month extensions, 8 months times 4. 2 times 4, yeah. So it cost me 14,000 pesos for 8 months. So I would not be concerned at all about distance to the immigration office or whatever, people's gripe about going once every 2 months anyway. I mean, you can't take one day out of 60 days to just go and do a extension. I don't know, but I extended mine till November, so 8 months all at once. There you go. There's the lie. Disproven. You're welcome.